Hello everyone, today we are going to look at Parmenides and his philosophy. You will understand why I have chosen a psychedelic background for this entire presentation in a moment when you realize that the philosophy of Parmenides is equally complex. Please turn on your captions if you have any trouble in following along. Let's get started. Parmenides was born in Ilia, which is today in southwest Italy but was once a part of the great Greek Empire. He wrote a famous didactic poem, meaning that the poem had two parts, the way of truth and the way of opinions. The way of truth was his own philosophy, whereas the way of opinions comprised of famous philosophical ideas of his time, which he did not agree with completely. He is the most important pre-Socratic philosopher because the entire pre-Socratic school can be divided into pre-Parmenides and post-Parmenides. He believed that the sensory world is a lie and nothing ever changes. In fact, that which does not change is the only thing that is real. This real thing, which never changes, was called being by him, whereas becoming, which means changes, are all false. He was an extreme rationalist. He believed that the senses were not reliable way of acquiring knowledge, and hence everything should be analyzed with the mind's eye. True knowledge, thus, can only be achieved with rationality and reasoning. Parmenides started off with a simple argument. Either something exists, that means it is, or it does not exist, which means it is not. But you cannot think of that which is not. Hold on. He does not mean that you cannot think of things which do not exist. A wide range of fictional movies and books would not be present in front of us if that were the case. What he means is that you cannot conceive nothingness as a concept. There are no changes taking place in the grand scheme of things, and hence there is no becoming. There are no changes. As in, if I ask you to describe me what qualities should a thing have to not exist, you will be clueless. Go ahead, pause the video and try it out. Don't be disheartened, we have all been there. Parmenides argued that nothingness cannot be conceived because its content does not exist. Each concept has some content, but in the case of nothingness, there is no content. Following up on that argument, we can say that everything that exists surely must have existed forever. If nothingness does not exist, then nothing was ever in nothingness, and hence nothing can come out of nothing. That is a little bit hard to wrap your head around, but it is essentially the idea of ex nihilo nihil fit. Nothing comes out of nothing. You have existed from time immemorial and will continue to do so. Your birth, adolescence, old age, and death are all illusory. Similarly, if empty space is to be described as nothing, then we have already stated how nothingness cannot exist and hence nothing can actually move. Parmenides argued that motion was impossible because the concept of empty space does not exist. After all, empty space is just another term for nothingness. That does not mean that Parmenides did not have limitations. He argued in his didactic poem how being was perfect and globe shaped. This seems like a materialist point of view. Melissus pointed out that if being was globe shaped, then it had a boundary, beyond which lay empty space and hence nothing. We see that Parmenides had the germ of two major rival philosophical factions in his philosophy, materialism and idealism. People like Democritus and Empedocles perfected the materialist side of his philosophy, whereas Plato perfected the idealist side of his philosophy. Plato was troubled by the epistemological nihilism of Heraclitus, who believed that knowledge of absolute truths was impossible because everything was changing. We will look at his philosophy in our next episode. Plato then looked at the theories of Parmenides about how nothing was ever changing, and in the grand scheme of things, everything that exists had always existed and will always exist. In order to reconcile the differences between these two philosophies, Plato came up with his own theory of forms, which we will look at when we will talk about him. That's it for this one, guys. I know this was a mind-boggling episode, but feel free to clarify your doubts in the comment section if you have any. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you guys like what I'm doing here. See you in the next one.